Is a smiley face on the end of an email low-key passive-aggressive?
Geez, I hope not, because I do a lot of smiley faces. Are you telling? Is this feedback for me now? So, yeah, I hope a smiley face isn't, because I'm a big fan of smiley faces, because I feel like a lot of emails are easy to misinterpret, and so I like to put little emojis on. But I feel like you're telling me that now probably I've just been passively aggressively attacking people.
Well, I've never been management, so I've never given the smiley faces out from that angle, but I've always had it, oh, could you do this and that for me? Smiley face.
I tell you what I did see. I saw that somebody was saying that a thumbs up is out, and that Gen Z, Gen Alpha have been, I don't know, petitioning, saying that it needs to be taken out of the emojis because it's always perceived as passive aggressive, like a thumbs up.
Oh, you saw me doing thumbs up today. It's
yeah,
fine.
It was fine, but then I'm an old fogey, so I can take it.
Nonsense, Nick. Anyway, what emoji on an email sign off is sure to be HR disaster?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I'm not an authority, but I'm guessing like the is it the eggplant thing?
Yeah.
Probably. Not that I would have ever used that, but
there's no way that you could misconstrue that into being something positive or different from what its meaning is, unfortunately.
I do hot dogs.
Hot dogs?
Yeah, hot dog. There's a hot dog emoji, and I do because I like this sort of hot diggity dog expression, like that kind of enthusiasm. But I could see how that might be. I mean, obviously not on a corporate email, but in WhatsApp and stuff, quite often I'll do like a hot dog emoji.
It's allowed. Let's circle back to this, the corporate version of ghosting.
I like how you used circle back. You're down with the kind of settling me in with the corporate lingo. So yeah, I think you're asking, does corporate ghosting happen?
When someone says, let's circle back to this in a meeting,
yeah,
is that their way of ghosting your point in the conversation?
I think let's put a pin in that is another one. Let's park that. Or people will say, can we put that in the parking lot? Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, I think those are all various ways to ghost somebody in a political way, yeah.
How do you feel about funny email sign-offs? Are you okay with them?
I like them because I think work is just far too serious, and I think that kills the vibe, if I can sort of use that expression. Am I entitled to use that expression? Can I use vibe?
You can do whatever you want.
I'm Gen X, so vibe, yeah, if it kills the vibe, I think, yeah, there should be more fun at work. So I think so.
What about over and out, you dirty trout? Is that going to get me fired?
Am I being asked to validate something here? Is this a trap? That's perfectly okay. Judge, this expert said that over and out, you dirty trout was...
Just a bit of fun.
Yeah.
To get me fired. When it comes down to it, would you rather be the office gossip or be caught gossiping the office gossip? Because we're all on one side or another in life.
I'm not sure, actually. I think the problem is I've been in HR too long and I just think gossip, it's like banter. It's like, I'm like, I don't know about that. So yeah, I tend to sort of avoid gossip a bit, I think.
You strike me as the one person who can't really answer that question because you're too nice to like get into the gossip, I
love how you're sort of drip feeding feedback through the conversation. It's just like, am I nice? How did I give that impression?
Well, that's the impression you give. You might be an absolute horror. I don't know.
But I feel like nice has become an insult, isn't it? If somebody's said they were nice, it's like insipid, isn't it?
I know men don't like cute. You're a cute guy. Like, ew.
Yeah.
They don't
beautiful.
like that.
They don't like that either.
Okay, well...
Yes. Small hands. You can also... There's a book, isn't there? And ways to completely destroy men. And it's like when they approach you, you say things like, I'm sorry, I don't have any change. That one really... or you say you have such dainty hands. Yeah. That's absolutely devastating.
Or it's like when the umming, ahhing, whether to pick up the bill, you just reach across and say, do you want any help with that?
It's a great one, yeah. Love that, yeah.
Oh, reverse psychology, I love it. Why is it always the bosses and the managers who have the least emotional intelligence?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. So I think like a serious answer would be that they get asked to do horrible things to people. And yeah, it's like the John Ronson. I'm never sure it's Ron Johnson or John Ronson, but he wrote a book called Psychopaths, and he was basically saying it can be quite advantageous if you are going to be in a position which requires you to do kind of difficult things like CEOs and stuff like that. And so sometimes I think it's the fact that people are dispassionate just makes them sort of people who you think, oh yeah, you'd be good at making tough decisions.
What gives you office anxiety?
The office. I generally would would rather not be in the office. I mean, having done it for decades, commuting in and out to London, all this kind of stuff, I think the whole social side of things, so I'm on the spectrum anyway, so the whole, you cope with it, and it's very draining. I find the office very draining.
You're a WFH, work from home.
Yeah. I know. I mean, we all have our biases, right? And I do like to go in the office and meet people once in a while, like in small doses.
Yeah. Play with the dogs, because they're allowed now.
I just think, especially the social side, I find it absolutely draining. So there's the kind of people who go into the office and they want to go out for drinks at the end of the day. I'm not one of these people. I'm like, yep, I've done my time. I'm off home now.
Yep. No Thursday drinks.
No.
Christmas do?
Yeah, I can think of some good Christmas do's.
But out of there by 9 p.m.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Are you a big movie buff?
I'm a big but moderate movie buff.
Are you familiar with Michael Douglas's body of work?
His oeuvre.
Yeah, his that exactly.
Have you ever seen The Game?
Yeah.
It's awesome.
I love it. I'm such like a Fincher fan. Like he's like one of my favourite next to Christopher Nolan. So
The Game is basically to some extent my job. That's what I do.
Okay.
I was literally speaking at a conference years ago in Lausanne in Switzerland. I was at IMD, Institute for Management Development, talking about how if you want people to change, you have to develop experiences. And this guy ran up to me afterwards and said, "Have you seen The Game by Michael Douglas?" And on the back of that conversation, we designed this whole long, big experience for their senior leaders, which was a lot of fun. We didn't put them in the boot of a trunk, strip them naked and shoot at them, but we did some quite experimental things with them.
Or make them jump onto a massive pillow.
Yeah, that would be good.
Employ Sean Penn.
Yeah.
Well, the reason why I asked you about Michael Douglas's work is he's been in a lot of different films that I want to ask you about. Uh-huh. So rank these films about office romances gone wrong from favourite to least favourite.
Oh no.
So number 1 is quite iconic. We've got Fatal Attraction with Michael Douglas and Glenn Close. B, Disclosure with Michael Douglas and Demi Moore. Or C, the newer film Baby Girl with Nicole Kidman and Harrison Dickinson.
Hate that whole, do you know what I hate about it? I was having
Baby Girl.
Yeah, the Nicole Kidman one. I was having this conversation with my wife about this, and what it boils down to this is that the sexualization of women, the idea that even when a woman becomes a CEO of a company, which is the plot, as I understand, I haven't seen it, but that she still secretly somehow wants to be dominated by a man. And it's like, why would you kind of, spread that perception that this is some secret kind of hankering that especially kind of powerful women have? So I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that movie or that plot line. I'm not going to see it.
I didn't get that from that film. I got it that you can exist in 2 different ways. Someone is not just dominant or submissive. I don't like terminology, but they switch and they change, Often, like if you look at dominatrix's work, they get a lot of high power CEO, different people going to see them because they spend the whole day telling people what to do, similar to Nicole's character. And then at the end of the day, like, I actually don't want to do this. I don't want to tell people what to do, and I have to go home, and then I'm expected to be the guy who knows everything and puts money on the table, and they just want someone to tell them what to do. So
yeah, I
that's
agree.
an angle.
No, I totally agree. I think that's absolutely correct. My issue is more, why would you pick on that particular thing and kind of frame, popular perceptions of women in that way? Because I think that's true. What you just said right there is true. That people have these, they can, not double lives, but people have different aspects of their personality, right? But it's that when now that we are seeing women in positions of power, I think to make that kind of a movie is kind of politically charged, because it implies to a lot of people that is, even when women gain those positions of power, they still at some level want to kind of submit to a man. And whilst that might be true in some cases, of course it's going to be true in some cases, it's like to popularize that view, I think that's kind of questionable.
Okay, interesting. We're going to agree to disagree. I think it's more about things being a bit more complicated and 2 things can be true at the same time. Yeah, people aren't monolithic. But
let's flip it. When have you seen a movie about a very powerful man who was a CEO and everybody respected him, and secretly he needed to be, kind of submitting to this much more junior kind of female? I don't remember ever having seen that kind of a plot line.
hear me out on this, but 50 Shades of Grey, because at the end of the day, yes, he's the one doing all the whipping and all that kind of stuff, but he needs to do that. So I guess that's a form of like, not desperation, but like need for that thing. And he's obsessed and besotted by this girl. And I often think like when you do have these very high power position men who maybe, I don't know, are attracted to someone who is just in a kind of like more, not to use a crude term, but subordinate role, it's because they lust after them and they want something from them. And I think that's a form of power, I suppose, but then also it can be manipulation on the person in charge's part because they have all the power to like end their job and do that thing. But if we're looking at love, you can't really control your feelings around it, or obsession. I understand that, I really do, and I can relate to that. I guess my worry is more that on a societal level, I guess, because my background is philosophy and psychology. You know, that was what I used to. And the worry is that, so I'm on TikTok a lot, as you know, because that's how you got in touch with me. And one of the things that you see quite often is that men are not allowed to look after, to kind of serve women or be seen to be in a more submissive way in any way, shape or regard. So if a guy is very overtly caring about his partner, what men will say is, you're a simp. They just simp. And the idea is that men have to be always in the more dominant position. And I don't think that's a healthy way for kind of society to progress, I guess. We're going to get into that, but we're just going to finish the quick fire. What was meant to be. We're still doing quick fire? Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's good. Okay. What office trend needs to go into the pooper? Oh, I mean, presenteeism. I guess that's going to be the big one. Is like, come across this presenteeism? What's a presenteeism? Like the fashion trend? No, presenteeism is where people are just going into the office to be seen. They're not because it's like if you're not there, you won't get promoted. It's like just showing up, clocking in, not actually really doing any work, but just being present, because that's how a lot of companies work. I think this correlates with the trend of office siren. Have you heard about it? I'm familiar with it, but can you explain it? Yeah, so basically the office siren is now, I suppose where we were all working from home in lockdown, women do want to dress up more for the office because it's an occasion to go in. Yeah. But it's also, I have to Instagram my outfit of the day, and that's really important. And it might be important and valid, but we need to make sure we get the work done too. I love that. But it makes the work much more performative. And I think that I have sort of mixed feelings about that. But romanticising it as well. Yes, I think cosplaying. Yeah. I like that. So it's like it's like watching Suits as a man and thinking, I want to look cool like that, and buying a suit and rocking up at the office and actually using the language in a very sort of performative way. I think a lot of people do that. It's interesting. Who's your intellectual crush? Intellectual crush. Be an old crusty philosopher if you want. He's got 9 toes. Thank you very much. Okay. That's so nice. I don't know. I think it has to be said, I'm a big Nietzsche fan. I see you've got John Gray's book Straw Dogs there. That's one of the books I like. Very depressing. But it's quite a few. I think, but Nietzsche is probably the one. But I'm not just a kind of a fanboy. I do disagree with him on certain things, especially his view on women. So yes, all with a pinch of salt. Yeah. If men menstruated instead of women, would they get time off in the office? Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Without a doubt. But actually also there would have been a lot more kind of medical investigations into it, and there would be like 101 cures and procedures and things that you could do about it as well. Yeah. So, yeah. Interesting. Nicholas, can I call you Nicholas or just Nick? Nick. Yes. Okay. Yes. Hi, Nick. Welcome to Sexonomic. I came across your content on TikTok, and how I came across it was you're doing a TikTok that was describing why some people, in particular men, have an issue when it comes to people wanting to work from home and not going back into the office, and you believe, to paraphrase, that it might be something to do with men like to feel important and boss people about in the office, and they don't get to do that from home. The original title for it, and I do these random TikToks before I have my coffee in the morning, and I never quite know what's going to catch on. So the title was, the main reason you're being asked to go back to the office is because middle-aged men don't get on with their wives. Yeah. And it sounds like it was just being provocative, but actually I've been scratching my head about return to the office for a while. When I was at Deloitte, had this super senior job at Deloitte for a while, through the pandemic, we were looking at who wanted to go back into the office, and it was disproportionately
senior, almost predominantly male partners. And we were like, why did they, of all people, want to go back into the office? And the best explanation we could come up with is it's because when you're a senior person in the office, you get all this respect. People want to spend time with you. They're sort of chasing you around. They look to you, like literally, they spend a lot of time looking at you for decisions. You feel important. People think your jokes are funny. And then when you go home, all of a sudden you're just another bloke in a t-shirt on a Zoom call, and you're being asked to, empty the dishwasher and, look after the kids and stuff. And you think, don't you realize how important I am? So I think a big part of the motivation is leaders want to reclaim their identity. They want to go back into the office because that's where their crown is the expression I used.
I kind of scoffed at it when I saw it, and I found the humour in it. So well done on that for being funny. But do you think there's something valid in what they're feeling, and maybe we owe a little bit of slight entitlement towards that? No, sorry, slight emotion and sympathy towards that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm only ever unintentionally funny, but I think that should I be more sympathetic towards them? I don't know. I think I always try to respect differences. So I understand that some people have that need, but the practicality of it is it's been super damaging for a whole bunch of people who are expected to commute long distances. There's the cost of that, the stress of that. There's the time away from their family, and all to serve somebody else's ego, so that they can feel that they're being worshipped appropriately. I don't know. I mean, it's not. I don't think it's the kind of thing to be applauded.
No, it's not. And as well, it's probably not monolithic. I'm sure there's people, that's my favourite word of the day, it seems.
Monolithic.
I'm sure there's people who just miss being in that environment and just belonging and having people there. But I do definitely feel you on that point, that there are some men who just miss bossing people about a little bit,
Yeah.
And it always is what's best for the majority probably should take place in terms of like work situations.
I think it's sort of dualistic, if I can use that expression.
Yeah, go on.
Because there are people who want to be in the office, and typically these might be extroverts, or they might be younger people who see the office as a place to kind of meet with their peers. And I get that. I think the issue more with leaders is that what I've seen is, because I work in sort of talent and learning and all that kind of stuff, it skews the whole promotion process. Because very quickly people get the idea that you have to be there kind of, rubbing shoulders with the leaders, otherwise you're not going to get promoted. And it just shouldn't be like that. You should be promoted on the basis of your merits and the quality of your work. Shouldn't be about, I've got to go into the office, because otherwise the leader, when it gets to promotion time, isn't going to think, I'm worthy.
This is how a boys' club is formed as well, because they have different rooms and people aren't always allowed into those rooms. And it's who goes on the social, who can they have a laugh with, rather than the output. Just to give the audience some context, your qualifications and your backgrounds and your experience, because they might just think, who's this man that Heidi's speaking to?
Thank you. So I'm a kind of a public nuisance. I'm quite active on social media. I started my career as a psychology lecturer, wrote some psychology textbooks actually, and went to work for the BBC and BP in senior roles, in leadership roles, and I wrote a book called How People Learn, and I went
BP when Deepwater Horizon was happening.
Immediately after.
Yep.
The best time to join. Yeah. So yes, I joined
the deep end.
Yes, I joined BP at the deep end. Then went on to consulting. I set up and led a service line, did that, and then went to Deloitte as chief learning officer. And I wrote a book, which I mentioned. And then I left and started up my own company. So that's the kind of the boring corporate spiel. Yeah.
Well, I guess why I wanted to have you here today was, apart from speaking about your excellent TikTok career, I wanted to look where our different content and our ideas cross. And obviously we're a sex and relationships podcast, and you work in a lot in the corporate world and helping people on how to learn. But I wanted to have a really good and contextual conversation about dating policy in the office, socializing and all these different things, because I do think it equals some kind of change into our work output. And especially now, since I would say probably like the 90s, we've had such a shift in how we look at that in the office. I can't pinpoint the exact spot because I was still in nappies when that was happening probably. But I thought you'd be able to give some good insight and some thoughts on that. So my immediate question is, why do you think people in some offices with their policies are very vehemently against it? Because you do go to those places where they have zero policy on it. Absolutely zero.
Yeah, so on the whole, I think office relationships are great. I think it's a good thing. So at the risk of, sounding controversial, I think they are so much better than what we have today, which is, so back in my day, if I can sound old for a second, I'm going to Gen X, most people would meet their partner in a work setting. And that's flipped now, and it's online. But the beauty of meeting somebody at work is you get to see them over time in a whole range of different interactions, and quite often under stress. And from a psychological perspective, that's a really good way to get to know people across different contexts. And when they're stressed, that's when you get to see kind of the real person.
A stress test.
Yeah. Whereas if you're just dating somebody online, you don't really know who they are. If you're just going on first dates, you have no idea based on that what they really are, because as somebody on the spectrum would say, it's kind of masking is what everyone's doing. They're trying to put their best image. And so I think it was always better to get to know somebody in the office context. But the issue that you've got, and to your question, is it's not that the dating per se. What people are worried about is, I think, exploitation.
Yes, I would concur with that point. It's kind of like a case of we had something nice, but because people have mistreated it, we can't have nice things anymore. Yeah. And I'm sure that it's also the company doesn't want the liability of dealing with the whole spiel if there's a fallout from it or some kind of case. So just as a full stop, they say no dating. But I don't know, it's a bit of an awkward topic to speak about as well, because no one goes, your intention going to work shouldn't be let me find the love of my life. It should be let me go to work to earn my money, have a nice time and do some work, in my opinion. But in terms of how do you, even navigate that or have correct systems that, is fair to everyone, it's just a bit of a minefield. Where do you start? Because we all know that it's different from, let's say, I'm working marketing and then someone's working in IT and we're just the same level from different departments. We know that's kind of not that weird with the power dynamic, but we know if it's someone in the C-suite and the intern, come on, can't be doing that, So where do you kind of, with your experience, put the line, and what systems do you think work?
Yeah. Are you saying this partly because the Andy Byron thing? The astronomer, the Coldplay concert?
Yeah.
So that was a clear example of kind of crossing the line. And I've experienced a few of those kinds of situations in my career.
Were they both C-suite, or was that quite a dramatic shift in the...
I think he was he CEO or something?
Yeah.
And she was head of HR, but I think she was only head of HR because he promoted her into that role, and it was all messy. But I think here's the thing. So you asked, where do you cross the line? And I think the answer is it's around exploitation, and there's a conflicts of interest process. So to sound horribly boring, I think when a relationship starts to become a relationship, the worry is exploitation. So I'll give you a couple of examples. If somebody is a CEO, then everybody else is going to be more junior, and clearly there's a risk of unfairness or exploitation that comes about because of that. Equally though, it could be if you are you have a budget. So you've got a big budget in the organization, and your relationship is with somebody in a vendor, who's actually providing services. So I don't think it's just about being within the company. It's in a work context. The basic process should be, on a case-by-case basis, you should raise a conflict of interest kind of form, and somebody should try and figure out whether or not there's a risk of kind of exploitation that's going on there.
So it does need to be submitted to HR, but seen in a fair lens, kind of.
Yeah, but that's where it gets messy, right? Because at what point, and this has really come up.
I know where you're going.
At what point is do you say, it's a relationship? It's if somebody just ended kissing somebody else at a Christmas party, is it
it's not
do they
just
have to go
kissing,
to HR the next day? It was when do you sort of say, it's a thing? It's are we going steady now? Should we announce it to HR? That's
you don't want, no one wants to disclose their drunken mess to HR. It's not fair, it might just be that. But it's interesting that you do think that there's kind of a space for it if it does happen organically and it's not hurting anyone and whatnot. But I suppose you've worked in HR, and obviously you're doing a lot of different things, but have you ever had any first-hand accounts of people going and disclosing that and it being okay or positive?
Well,
I don't know if you're the one behind the desk going like, okay, so you two are together, you crazy kids.
yeah, give you my blessing. I mean, this is horrible. Also, I take issue with you saying that I work in HR, because people are going to be like, oh no, HR, everyone hates HR. I'm sort of HR
But you did
adjacent.
say you worked in HR.
I'm working sort of, but that's only because learning and development often sits, not like one of those like HR people. But I have seen examples of it going horribly wrong. And I think there's a generational thing as well, right? So early on in my career, I remember, so this would be going back maybe 30 years, the HR director at a big company was a guy called Les, and he was married. And actually at the Christmas party, he was quite openly kind of canoodling. Can I use that expression? Are you going to bleep that out?
No, canoodling is fine.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
With junior female members. This is kind of the HR director. And this is the point I'm making here is I think there was an era for the younger people out there where, this was considered part of the privilege of being a senior male, is that you could kind of do this sort of stuff.
It's the hunting ground for you to indulge in whatever you want, and no one can say shit to you.
You're entitled to do that. And I think that's what we saw with that like Andy Byron stuff, and the way that he reacted to that. It's just sort of reeked of entitlement. It's like, I'm a super important person, I can do this kind of stuff. And I think that's what's changing and should change.
I mean, it's not just an Andy Byron thing. It's a whole, culture and thing that I actually think will probably take decades to weed out completely. And it'll probably still have like a small line of it happening in whatever place you look, because unfortunately when you look at humans, like bad and good does exist in them. But as you said, it's about having the structures in place so people do feel safe. But also at the end of the day, it's about protecting, I suppose, predominantly women in the workplace.
Yeah. Because
often, even when you do look at the C-suite, majority of it, probably men. I don't know what the stats are on that. It's probably you who know the stats on like how many men are in the C-suite. So you do have to be aware of that disbalance, and also what type of, unfortunately, like culture people have grown up around. Because I feel like a lot of the response right now, in particular to, we had Me Too, Time's Up and all that kind of thing. Yeah. And a big response that we're having now, especially in young men and what we're calling the incel movement, is because their grandfathers and their, dads promised them a world where they can pretty much do whatever they want and the world is yours and a woman can't say shit to you because this is your world, it's a man's world. And now they're here and they realise, oh, it's not really what was promised to me. So translating that into the work environment, I can see a lot of things going wrong in that respect.
I think you're completely right. I think it's a huge problem, because I think there was a point where it seemed like we were going forwards with the rise of more kind of enlightened diversity and inclusion, respect for diversity of all kinds, gender, race and so on. But now I think we've gone into reverse. And I believe that because there was a recent poll of values, and many, I guess people will know this, is that women are becoming, relatively speaking, more left-wing in their views, and young men becoming radically more right-wing, urged on by a media which knows that it can use kind of outrage and extreme views to sell stuff. And so they are massively diverging. And the problem is that, teenage boys are going to be split out, streamed, if you like, in a completely different direction to teenage girls. And they're going to confront each other in the workplace. And I think the level of tension and I think potential for incident, I think, is now going way back up again.
Do you think it's this period in time, or do you think it's something we'll manage to work through and soften over time?
I think it's going to, as a trend, it's going to get worse and worse, because if what the trend is that social media gets more clicks and views by feeding you more outrageous content, and if people aren't actually together post-COVID as they were in an office, you get more scope for radicalization and people being polarized in their views. And so I think that is going to happen more and more and more and more until people just find it almost impossible to talk to somebody from a different part of the kind of political spectrum, or a different gender, or a different race, because the content, their bubble that they've been seeing, has all been self-affirming, has all been validating. It's like, yeah, your extreme views are absolutely correct. And I think that means the political temperature is going up, but the potential for conflict in the workplace is going up as well.
Well, It says here that 97% of women, this is across the board, not just in the office, will and have experienced sexual harassment. And then we also know the stat of 1 in 4 women will be sexually assaulted or even worse. So when you look at that and you want to have a conversation with a man and you're like, I'm not trying to attack you, I'm not trying to make you feel less than, but I just want you to listen to that, they instantly feel attacked and say, oh, well, it's not me doing that. Well, what I'd quite like you to do is to talk amongst yourself and sort the issue out. It's actually not my issue to sort out, but it ends up being when you have like harassment, whether it is in the workplace or different pockets and whatever, it's probably more likely someone you know, right?
Yeah.
You know, it always feels like it's a woman's issue to weed out, you know, and then, I don't know, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's horrifying, and I think that women's experience of the workplace is radically different to men's. Very few men will be sexually harassed in the workplace. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's much rarer. As you say, 97% of women. So I do think they need to go through different training. I think that training needs to be primarily about taking different perspectives. I guess I did diversity and inclusion training in the early days, like way back when it was first a thing. And the problem with it initially was that it felt like a slap on the wrist, which is, I think, what you're saying. It's like we used to do training, which was basically the legal implications of discriminating against these strands. And the way that landed with middle-aged white men who were mainly your audience was not good. It was kind of like they were being told, you know, this telling off, you'll get a slap on the wrist if you're mean to any of these groups of people. And it actually did not have a positive impact. So what I can tell you is all the metadata. It's not how
people learn, is it?
Yeah, no, it's not. So it moved in a positive direction as people started talking about inclusivity. And that was about, well, how would you feel? You know, that was the question. How would you feel if you were excluded from conversations at work? And everybody gets that that's not a good experience. So then it's like, okay, so maybe don't do that to these groups of people. But all I'm going to say is that I think you've got your work cut out if you're trying to turn men's attitudes around. Because every time I try, I don't really feel personally that I do sometimes on social media that I'm hitting the mark, because men aren't going to listen to women. That's clear. People like Drew Afualo, for example, men are like, you know, now radically polarized. They're not going to listen to women. If you do the female advocacy thing, which a number of the people creators on TikTok do, immediately guys are like, oh, you know, you're
pussy whipped,
you're a simp, you're this, that, the other. Don't want to listen to you. And so it's really tough to find a space where you can role model the right behaviors, because it seems like men only want to listen to a certain kind of man.
When things like that happen to me and I can see it is sexism or something like outdated, I just match their freak on like how hostile they are, usually, because I don't work in a corporate setting. But to dial it back to, you know, we briefly touched on seminars and, you know, sexual harassment seminars, which a lot of corporate companies have, mostly because I don't know if it comes from a caring place. It comes from a place of we want to legally cover ourselves, which is just the world. It's capitalism. It's what we live in. Will a sexual harassment seminar ever really stop a predator? Probably not.
Wow.
It just won't.
I think, you know, maybe, I don't know. Well, I'll tell you one of the things that we used to do, because I think you're right. Basically, I think just telling people what they're not supposed to do, I'm not sure that fundamentally changes them. But there's something about giving the people the experience of being on the receiving end, and there's something about hearing stories. So I used to work with an organisation called Women Ahead, Moving Ahead. And one of the amazing things that they did was they brought people from different diverse communities, like the transgender community, to come into a room and talk to people about their story. And what that did was that punctured the stereotype that people had. If you hadn't met somebody who's transgender before, it would like make them, they were relatable. They were human beings. And you could think, well, that was a pretty crappy experience you went through, wasn't it? It's like, well, I wouldn't want to do that to you. That was powerful. And I used to run an exercise where we actively discriminated against people who normally hadn't experienced it. So we used to get them, the exercise, I won't go into detail, but you were getting them building towers out of spaghetti and marshmallows, and we divide them secretly into 2 groups. It was a bit like the traitors, and you'd tell one group, you're going to be mean to this other group in all these little ways, like mispronounce their name, talk over them, don't make eye contact, ignore them, you know. And after half an hour of being treated like that, most people, whatever your gender, race, whatever, would say, well, that was just a horrible experience. And then you could say to them, well, why would you do that to somebody else then? So, yeah, I think just sitting people in a room doing chalk and talk doesn't change things. But I think there are things that can change people if it's handled well.
Boots on the ground, how many companies do you think are taking your approach that you just kind of suggested there?
No, I mean, I think you're right. Basically, most companies are just doing it because they want to cover themselves legally. But, I spend a lot of time talking to people about, well, don't do that because it's not enough. And there are some companies, I couldn't put a percentage on it, which actually do care, about people and creating the right kind of environment and a sense of belonging. And, hopefully that number will grow.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I guess that's really where podcast marries in with what you do today. It's how people learn and stuff. And, even dialing it back to like children and how they learn. We had someone who works in the sexual health space on the podcast last week. And she gives, it will sound extreme, but it's not as extreme as it sounds. She gives like sexual education classes to kids, but not in the context of learning about the actual birds and the bees, but about, boundaries and saying, well, how would you feel if someone touched you this way? You wouldn't like it. And that's how you should expect this person to feel. And I do feel like a lot of, resources of when people are at work would be saved if those things were taught when they're younger. And it really does start with education, and how people learn. But I think people look at learning as such a, to use the word again, monolithic thing of, you hear something, you look at something and the information goes into your brain and you just do it. But you really have to labour that emotional kind of connection to that thing.
Yeah, I think you're right. So give a
How
real
weird,
example.
I'm right, I'm never right.
I think you have to do the emotional labour. And there are ways to do that, I think, with people that aren't just like school. So real example, I designed a program for leaders in a big aircraft engine manufacturer. They're mostly men. And these leaders, it turned out, were very bad at handling conflict. And so we kicked off this leadership session. They're all sitting around like school children in chairs. And we started it with a fight, like a literal fight. So the two facilitators, Johnny and Mark, Johnny would say, Mark, can you move to the next slide, please? And Mark would say, yep. And Johnny would say, it's the wrong slide, mate. It's not the right slide. Have you got the right slide? Mark would say, no, this is the right slide. And Johnny said, no, we talked about this last night. And Mark would say, no, you told me to leave this slide in. And it would escalate until one was pushing the other. And then you'd stop the action and you'd say to these leaders, all of whom were really bad at managing conflict, like, who noticed that there was some kind of conflict brewing? All the hands go up. How did that make you feel? Why didn't you step in? What was it that stopped you stepping in? And then you can replay the action and people can play out what they would do. So you could do the same with sexual harassment, because I think often leaders they haven't really thought about how to handle it until it happens, and then when it happens it's all too fast or whatever, they don't know what to say and they don't do anything. So you can role play it, you can have people practice it and say, right, now what are you going to say? How do you think this person is feeling? How do you think they feel that you didn't say anything? And you can get people to work through that emotional work that you talked about. That's quite powerful. You
just pushed me onto a different set of tracks in my mind that is just popped into my mind. And that's a group of men that you were doing your kind of seminar there, not kind of, but your seminar there with. And it got me thinking about agreeableness versus disagreeable. And the person I think about that when I say those two words is Jordan Peterson, because he seems to be very heavy on, almost every piece of content you see is like, well, women are most traditionally, agreeable creatures because of socialization, dummy. And then like, men are, challengers and they're very disagreeable and they're very, they have more tenacity. But what you said there, it sounded like a group of men who are very agreeable and they just want to get on, really.
Wow.
Unless they're pushed into an argument.
I did like the Jordan Peterson impression you did there. I might ask you
not
more
of
that. He's like, I don't know. I don't appreciate it when he talks about women as creatures and agreeable. I don't know, that probably what the psychology would tell you is there's a biological element and there's a socialization element, which is they're sort of forced by society to be more agreeable because they have to be kind of hyper aware, for example, of risks. And, probably women are inherently more emotionally intelligent. But to your point, was that because men were more agreeable? No, it's because they were mainly promoted, as many men are, because they were technically strong. this happens a lot, by the way, is that the guy's really good at a technical job, and you say, oh, you're really good at, that architecture stuff or that electrical engineering thing. Now we're going to make you a leader, which is absolutely the worst thing to do, because they've got no people skills. And what they were afraid of was confrontation. They don't have emotional intelligence. They don't know how to handle these situations. They just get anxious, and those are not good people to have in leadership roles. And so you have to develop their capability if you want them to be good.
If, let's say, we brought up the emotional intelligence to match, I suppose, women's emotional intelligence in the corporate world, how much money would we save on hirings and firings and moving people about in their jobs? Would it be something sizable?
Well, we can add some data and research into this. Number one, women generally do have better emotional intelligence. Number two, the good thing about emotional intelligence, which is Daniel Goleman's kind of concept, is that unlike IQ, you can improve your EQ. So if you don't have good emotional intelligence, I don't, for example, you can improve it through kind of practice and through working on it. And in answer to your question, there is some research around women-only leadership teams, and those companies tend to outperform, male-led leadership teams. So I don't know exactly what the money would be saved, but my hunch is that organisations would be a lot better off if there were more women in leadership.
It's interesting because you say that, and I can see it in my mind being like, oh, we're going to put women in charge just because we have to, and we have to. What's the word for it when you just put people in?
Quotas, you mean? Quotas
and all that stuff, and it just kind of makes you frown a little bit, because at the end of the day, it should be equality of opportunity to show that you've got the chance to do it.
That's exactly what's not happening at the moment. No, I completely agree with that. It should be the best person for the job, but it's literally, because I've spent decades working with leadership, the people that are being promoted into leadership are exactly the wrong people based on what you'd want them to do. So one of the key things with leaders is they need to have emotional intelligence, because they've got to get a team of people who are all very different to work together. And so you need people who with people skills to do that well. There was a piece of research actually that came out really recently from last couple of months. Harvard Business Review said that leaders with people skills significantly improve the performance of organizations. So the data is there. Are we hiring those people to be leaders? No. What we're doing is putting men in those roles because they're good at these technical roles. It happens time and time again in so many of the organizations. True in BP, it's oh, you're really good at your whatever mechanical, project tracking or electrical engineering or coding. We're going to make you a leader. It's no. You want to hire the best leaders, not the people who have been best at their jobs. It's not like a reward for being good at your job. So that's precisely where we're going wrong today, is women on average would make better leaders, but we're putting men in the roles that they ought to be in.
Well, also being a leader and a manager, not that I've had extensive experience in it. I mean, I lead myself, and that's very difficult on the best of days. Yeah. But, you have to have a whole different plethora of emotions that you can flow through and, engage with different people on. It's not about having a monolithic emotion or, just very rigidly decompartmentalizing that. And it's also so astounding that, again, a generalization that often comes out of men and women's mouth is, women, they're so emotional. But every human on the planet is emotional. Emotional, it's a container word for an emotion. And isn't it weird that we just say women are emotional rather than they're in tune and they can actually handle and calibrate their emotion and deal with it healthy? Being quiet and reserved and sad, that is an emotion. Being angry is an emotion. Being happy is an emotion. Being sad is an emotion. It just befuddles me that people will use the word, oh, she's a bit emotional, No, she's articulate with what she's feeling. And the problem is that you're not expressive enough with your emotions, so no one can read what you're saying or what you're doing. So if we're using the way you use the word emotional, you need to be more emotional, sweetheart.
So I'm going to cut to the chase on that, which is that all thinking is emotional. And so this is not just me saying this. There's a neuroscientist called Mary Helen Immordino-Yang, who is a student of another neuroscientist called Antonio Damasio, who wrote a book called Descartes' Error, who basically point out that emotion is part of all thinking. So that it's sodding Plato that we have to blame for this, and Descartes. So Plato, very early on, if if you know Plato, one of the kind of original philosophers said, look, your mind is like horses which are going upwards towards heaven, which is reason, and emotions which are kind of dragging you downwards, which are emotion. So he created this completely manufactured artificial separation between reason and emotion. And basically with people like Rene Descartes, I think therefore I am, it was the thinking, the rational, that connected you to God. And the position basically became that thinking and thought and reason is what makes you godlike, and emotions are what make you animalistic and childlike. And then this became associated with a stereotype that women are emotional and can't be trusted with important decisions. But the truth is that men are just as emotional, but they're just disconnected with it. They get deeply attached to ego. They get attached to the idea of competing and victory and of winning. And so people will say, well, we have to think about the future of the company and make all these people redundant. And it's just because they're so addicted to the idea, emotionally addicted to success and of their own kind of sense of triumph. And so men are, if anything, everybody is emotional. They're just less in touch with the emotions that are driving their decision making. Whereas women, I would suggest, are more aware of the emotional drivers for decisions, and their brains are literally physiologically better connected. So I'm so glad you raised it, because it's one of the biggest parts of that stereotype, is that men are somehow more dispassionate. They're not. They punch TVs when their football team loses. It's like, no, they're just less in touch with their emotions. They just pretend like, which is awful. It's a lot of decision making is inauthentic because of that.
So they could handle 5 gears, but they choose to handle 2 when we're all capable of handling 5. But that's interesting, like that whole history of why the word emotional is such a pigmented word, when really it's just a describing word for different states that could be, and people grammatically use it wrong, like they're emotional. Well, as long as you're alive and have a pulse, you're emotional. You have emotions running through you. So that's just like another version of how the English language has been, what's the word? Twisted, corrupted, bastardized. The philosopher David Hume, and you have to forgive the expression, but he said, reason is and should only ever be the slave of the passions. And what he was trying to say is that reason is kind of like a calculator. It's fine, you can punch the numbers in, but the numbers have to mean something to you, and it's passion that drives that. So reason will tell you how to get something if you want to get something. And what often happens is that people posture as being completely rational, when really what they're doing is they're just hiding their real kind of emotions behind it. So if women led Fortune 500 companies, let's just say there was like an immediate switch, not that that's how it should be, but let's just humour me, the GPD of emotional intelligence and the benefit from that, what would that look like?
I think it would look like teams which are better constructed. So teams of people who have complementary kind of capabilities. I think it would mean more supportive leadership. And what I mean by that specifically is leaders who are better listeners. And I have seen some men do this. Bob Dudley, for example, former CEO of BP, when he was thinking about an important decision, would ask everybody in the room what they thought before he answered. And so he kind of led with emotional intelligence and humility. So I'm not just saying men can't do this, but I'm saying the best leaders do this. So listening to people, being more inclusive in teams, with the result that we get better quality decision making, reducing risk to organizations, improving performance because the decisions reflect multiple perspectives, which is the best way to get a decision. And I think what we had in the past, and BP is a good example with Lord Brown, is kind of like rock star leadership, where there has to be one guy who calls the shots. And the problem is the reality with that
creates a fight to get to the top, and that's what they want.
I think you're right, So it just becomes, it just becomes quite a sort of dog-eat-dog environment. And so, I don't think that makes for the best business performance.
It's simplistic to say that some men just don't want to listen to women because of what they've been taught. You can also imagine it in a meeting, say there's like 6 partners, 5 men, 1 woman. And it is getting better, like there are more women in C-suite positions, like we can't discredit that. But you can just like imagine and feel that if that woman had to say, this is not how we should be running things, I want to change it, and the man is not feeling that, he'd be like, oh, look at this bitch over here, like telling me what to do. And that's not even because he's thinking about it logically. He's thinking about it from a standpoint of, I'm the man. I should know what decisions to make.
Yeah.
And this bitch over here is telling me what to do.
Yeah.
You know, so like, not that I've experienced a lot of that in that context, but like my advice is you can't take that stuff personally because they just don't know any better.
Yeah.
And it's not my job to wipe up their mess that they've shit the bed on that, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
And then we fall into like the fallacy of becoming their mother, which is like a whole other thing of like babying men and stuff. But I don't know. I just talked myself into a cartwheel. I don't know where I've landed that. Sorry.
No, I think you raised lots of really interesting things. I think girl and women generally is for a certain generation was used as a slur. It was like, oh, you fight like a girl, or, you know, don't be such a girl. So it was literally like a term of abuse. And then I think you also touched on, you know, women in this sort of maternal role. So when I first started out, you won't believe this, but my first leadership job, it wasn't even a big leadership job. I was given a car, like you were given a company car, and I was given a secretary.
Okay.
It was like, here's your car, here's your secretary. And so I was like, all right, what are they here to do? I didn't know. They were like, well, they just look after, you know, just like, do you know what I mean? Like they're just there to help look after you because you're important, and they run around like, you know, cleaning up your mess, like you said. And I think that we're still trying to get rid of that, and it bubbles up in meetings. And the other thing that you touched on is, I think a lot of what men do is for the sake of other men. Yeah. So they're like posturing because they want the approval of other men in the room. And I see that happening with a lot of young men as well.
It's got a little bit of homosexuality about it, hasn't it?
Quite possibly, yeah.
And that's no shade, you know.
Yeah.
We love our gays on the podcast. But like, it like men don't always want to impress women, they want to impress other men.
I know, and this is the weirdest thing about like TikTok. It's like these like young boys, especially, you know, the young men, probably older boys, younger men, kind of just being like ostensibly horrible towards women online. It's like, who are you trying to impress with that? It's like, do you never want to be in a relationship with a woman? It's like but you're trying to impress these guys over here who you think are important. And yeah, where's that going to go ultimately?
I remembered where I wanted to land my mental cartwheel now. It's about America and like the last presidential debate. Because I had a talk with my uncle about it, and we were just kind of shooting the shit over it. Uh-huh. And we both basically came to the conclusion of, you know, let's say if Kamala Harris was a man and everything was the same, but it was just she looked like a man and she had a penis and she spoke in a deeper voice. Mm-hmm. We had a theory that she would probably get more votes because people feel more, I don't know, safe voting for a man. We don't agree with that, and also we live in England, so we don't really have a problem having a female prime minister. But it's just interesting that we both kind of landed on that point of like, it doesn't really matter like what more she could have said or what not. Like over there's just such a culture of like, you know, maybe perhaps middle America don't want to listen to a woman. And even if it was a woman that they'd have to listen to, she would have to be the absolute like dog's bollocks and like never get anything wrong, never be a human, and be basically near perfect. And she'd probably still get criticised beyond what a traditional male candidate would. It's interesting that they have that over there, and over here it's not so much of a thing.
I think they do, and I guess I also think I agree. I don't know if you know Sam Harris. He's got a podcast.
Where is he? He's on this shelf. Oh, I think Waking Up Sam Harris. We have it on here. Well, next to you.
Yeah. Oh, is he? Oh, yeah, cool. Sam Harris, Waking Up. Yeah. Awesome. And then underneath there, you've got Waking the Buddha.
Yeah.
Like waking up the Buddha. So yeah, I think he said something which I don't know a lot about American politics, but I listen to other people, and he said, well, part of the problem was I'm sure there was a gender element to it, but it was also that the left got so closely associated with trans rights, and that was an alienating theme for people, because most people, their day-to-day concerns are the prices of eggs, which is why the right were like, you know, I'm going to lead on the economy and stuff. And so that's what it's nice to see, that where the left is getting it right, like the new New York mayor is campaigning not on trans rights, which is important, but you know, leading with things like the economy and quality of life for people. Yeah. And so that's important. As for Kamala Harris, yeah, I think that's absolutely true. There's a gender dimension to it, but that's deeply problematic. That's a horrible word, isn't it? Problematic, but what
I think it is. Let's not skate
over it.
Yeah.
I think the problematic's problematic.
It's a bit of a buzzword, like the idea of when you say the word problematic is that you got purple hair. You're like, it's problematic.
Yeah, it's one of those words where I think I'm being a bit of a twit when I hear myself say it.
Same with like patriarchy. Like, it's the patriarchy.
Yeah, good. Thanks for the red flag on that. I think, but what is the idea that a leader has to be like the strong man, and this has been around for a long time. Is like the same with Putin. It's like and Trump posturing as the strong man, and the research science on decision making says you get a better decision if you've got not just one person making the decision and everybody else following, but you've actually got one person who is listening to multiple perspectives before they make their decision. And so I think we're just I guess it's obvious really that we're promoting the wrong people into leadership positions because we've got the stereotype that the leader has to be this kind of forceful, rock star type leader.
I think as well a bit of it is if the woman does win on merit over the man, or I don't know, gets into the highest position in the world, like the leader of the free world, everything they've been taught, they have to question and go back to the drawing board, which is a scary thing. Like, it's a very scary thing to be like, oh God, I don't get to call the shots anymore. Or like, oh God, I really have to rethink that I am beatable. So before we kind of say goodbye and go away, one thing I wanted to touch on was the gender pay gap, because I genuinely feel like I only know like the carrot top of the situation. Yeah. And I feel like the audience could really benefit from knowing like the breadth of it and the wideness of it, because at the minute on the surface you get lots of podcasts saying, like there is a gender pay gap, women can earn the same salary as a man and whatnot. But from the understanding that I get of it is that it's not necessarily that, a woman's getting paid a different salary. It's that she's kind of left behind in terms of being able to accelerate into C-suite and higher power positions. And that's kind of what the gap is indicative of. Did I get that right?
Yeah, I think you did. Yeah.
It's okay if I haven't. You can say no.
No, that's absolutely right. So first off, there remains a gender pay gap. And that, just to be clear, that means that a man and a woman doing the same job will be paid differently. That's still the case. The gap is closing. That's the good news. And I think some organisations like Deloitte that I used to work for, to their credit, publish their stats, their gender pay gap. And I think organisations should be required to do that, to publish their gender pay gap and to commit to closing it. But the interesting thing is what you just said, which is that on the basis of what I've been saying, which is I think leaders are better if they're women, why aren't we seeing more women in leadership? Because actually what you see as representation, female representation, as you go up through the ranks, gets lower and lower. And people will make excuses for that. And those excuses, I've heard all kinds of them. So sometimes it's like, well, we just didn't have that many women applying. Other times it's like, well, they just haven't got the skills.
They're meant to have babies. So
yes, or they take, exactly. They take maternity leave and that sets them back. And if you look closely at what's happening, there's often a lot of bias in the process. It's like, well, when you're recruiting, advertising for a role, people will say, for example, we didn't have any women apply. It's like, oh, where were you advertising? Was it in sort of Anglers Monthly, or you look at the advertising process, and it is implicitly biased. The language, the places that people are advertising towards a certain demographic. So that happens a lot.
But I also know my ex-boyfriend, he was quite a bit older than me, but he was like a managing director of a company. And the thing that I gathered from him, like he worked very hard, and I know he got where he was on his own merit. But what I got from him was like, when you are having those conversations, it's not like a meeting that a headhunter goes out and finds someone. It's more kind of these C-suite people, managing directors, not him explicitly, but like, directors who speak to their friends and say, have you got anyone good for the job? Do you know anyone? Like words of recommendations, which aren't meant to be harmful with intent towards, other people trying to get into those positions. But it is like, I guess, could you call it a form of like faded nepotism, that kind of thing.
Yeah, it is implicit bias. I'll tell you two things we know for sure is that women who go into leadership roles are far more likely than men to receive criticism. So if you're a woman who steps into leadership, your performance reviews, you'll be absolutely hammered with criticism. Whereas if a man were doing the same job in the same way, saying the same things, they would get far, far less criticism. The second thing we know for sure is that women and men are perceived differently when they do the same things. So, when a woman is quite forthright or speaks her mind, that's perceived as, I don't know, being a bit of a bitch or, whatever. Whereas when a man does it, that exact same behaviour will be perceived as being kind of strong and so on.
Go-getter.
So yeah, especially at those senior roles, that's part of the problem with promotion. A lot of it is just done on the basis of like word of mouth and perception. And because today, mainly that's kind of male perception, that massively disadvantages women in a whole host of ways.
I mean, if you don't believe us, and you're probably someone listening or watching this and thinking like, oh, Heidi and Nick are doing a quite far stretch here, the Garrick Club.
Yeah,
that is like probably one of the best examples I could give to someone, which is basically a group of they're like probably like some of the best lawyers in the country, right, who go to a members club, but it's like men only, and I think women are allowed on Tuesday, which is the worst day of the week anyway, like Tuesday. I hate Tuesdays. And basically it's a male only space, but it's not the problem that there's a male space for men to go to. It's that all of these lawyers who make very important decisions and have very important clients and pass around a lot of work are in a space where no women can access that. So how the hell do you get inside of that if you're never allowed in there?
Yeah.
It's just an impossibility. So that's why I think you see a lot of women starting their own things. I think there's a lawyer called Charlotte Proudman, and she kind of recognized this and she started her own law firm. And I think that's why you're seeing a lot of women like branching off, starting their own things. Like even my financial advisor, she said, I'm going to start my own thing because I want to run things the way I want to run them. So I don't know if that'll just trickle on, and then like men will be like, where have all the women gone in the office? And then they'll start to miss them a bit, maybe.
Well, yeah, maybe. I think at the moment...
Or they just really love each other, so they might just start doing that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, maybe. That might be the only answer. It is a bit depressing. The overall picture, in case you're wondering about, why are we talking, it sounds like sort of female advocacy, why am I a proponent of that? I think that it's a great shame that effectively women have raised the bar, and men are not responding to that positively by saying, we need to do better. We need to get better at some of these areas like emotional intelligence. Instead, they're just moaning and bitching about women and starting to say
it's not very masculine, is it,
Nick? No, and I don't think it is, and I don't think it's something to be proud of. It's like, oh, it's so unfair, it's like the cards are stacked against us. Women are better treatment. It's like, come on,
for 1 minute,
just get better, just be better.
Yeah. It feels sometimes like we've had a bit of the conversation for like one minute. Yeah. And they themselves in some kind of pressure cooker and they just can't handle it.
Now it's a male loneliness epidemic.
I've not heard.
Yeah. This is what female liberation is now amounting to. It's a problem because the males are lonely, and it's your fault. It's
my fault. Oh, yes. I guess I better go and make them a sandwich.
That's exactly what they would like, I'm sure.
With shit in. But anyway, final question. We've said it's quite bleak. And it is bleak. We're not going to sugarcoat it. But do you think there's a room for it to get better? Because I'm forever an optimist.
I was just reminded there's that meme TV clip where the guy has asked the climate change scientist, give us some optimism. I don't know. I can't see it getting better. I think
what has to change for it to get better? That's more actionable.
Well, let me say what I'm worried about. AI girlfriends. Okay. AI girlfriends. It's like, this is the next thing that's going to happen. Did you know like a third of... Do you have an AI boyfriend?
No, but me and ChatGPT, we have a thing.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. Well, so this is becoming a thing. It's becoming a thing very fast. And if you have teenage kids, a third of them apparently already have like AI, companions, like more like romantic. But anyway.
It's bad because they don't tell you to shut up, and when you're being stupid,
this is it. It's like men there's some research around this. Men men are creating these AI girlfriends and then abusing them, taking out their frustration on them. And so I think that's going to start to happen more and more, which is where, because men can't relate to women, because as we said, the values gap is just getting wider and wider, and women aren't prepared to be kind of submissive and be treated that way, is that men, instead of improving, are turning to kind of AI as a substitute. And I think that's just going to make their behaviour like worse and worse and worse. So yeah, we're going to have men and women in the workplace, and that's why I say it's going to be a lot of work to do to get them to work together and to take perspectives.
But I think there are good, I know them, like there's such like good men in this world who, what we've spoken about today, this isn't them, you know, you're here, this isn't you, you know. And I think that's the hope, that there's men who aren't okay with this and they think this isn't our narrative, actually. It's their narrative.
I like that in the course of this conversation, I've been upgraded from nice to good somewhere along the way. But I know what you mean, but here's the problem. They're in a bubble. It's like I follow some really interesting women on TikTok, and I follow some really interesting men on TikTok. But the point is that that's driving me in one direction where these things seem obvious to me. But if I look at a lot of young men, they're not following these, what you call good men or good women. They're following all the worst kind of voices, like the Jordan Peterson slippery slope, you know, into like red pill philosophies and ideologies. And that is the problem, is that how do you connect with those people who are becoming increasingly driven, you know, into kind of extreme positions?
I don't know. Just stop dating them if you're a woman, stop having sex with them, stop engaging with them, and then if you're a man, like stop talking to them. But then you just isolate them. It's really hard, Nick.
Isn't that extermination? I mean, technically it's like we're just going to breed them out of the population. I think that's, I mean, I know exactly, it's like funny because I've heard women say that. It's like, well, they're just not going to end up reproducing, and it's Darwin, evolution, you know, we'll just take care of them. And it's like, oh yeah, but
I know myself, and I know from women like they say they hate these kinds of genres of men, but like they sleep with them, they start babies with them, they have families with them, and that's for women to take accountability in that situation. Like, have I had like a boyfriend who is probably like ilk to some of what we've spoken about today? Yes, I have.
Yeah. Like,
I am part of the problem. Nice to meet you.
What age were you though, if you don't mind me asking?
Probably like 24, you know. But like 27 now is a bit too old to be doing that.
Well, I think that's interesting because I think that's why, who's that actor who will only date women under 25?
Leo
DiCaprio.
And Bradley Cooper,
So I think there's a whole different conversation around how men have spotted the fact that women will make bad decisions up to a certain point where maybe the prefrontal cortex develops, and so they prey on young women precisely because they know that they're easily kind of influenced and persuaded to make bad decisions. And
that's conveniently why women of 30 and older are being called washed up. And not, they're bullying you, so basically you succumb to them and feed into their, because
they can't be easily pushed around, because they know what's going on.
Thank you for coming today, Nick. I would love to have you for a second round at some point when some kind of disaster happens in this male loneliness epidemic. But thank you so much. Where can people find you?
Oh, they're hard to avoid me, to be honest. I'm on LinkedIn if you're super boring, but I'm also on TikTok as @Shackleton-Jones. So yeah, you can find me ranting incoherently about all kinds of things.
I think your TikTok has more Riz.
Does it?
Yeah.
Riz. I've learned that.
Okay.
I'm rizzed up.